Uncovering Mysteries in Custer's Last Stand. A Sioux warrior's perspective. Edward Suttle Godfrey, Jr. was a lieutenant with the 7th Cavalry Regiment during the American Indian Wars. Known for his key role and first-hand account of the Battle of Little Big Horn, also referred to as Custer's Last Stand, his detailed observations from June 25, 1876, provide crucial insights into the battle where Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong, Custer's forces met their end. Godfrey, a member of the regiment's command staff, managed to lead a group of troops to safety amidst the chaos. His accounts are considered among the most reliable and valuable records of that day's events. Before we dive into his account, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to stay connected with our community. On April 16, 1876, while stationed at Macomb City, Missouri, I received orders to present my troop, K of the 7th Cavalry, to the commanding general of the Department of Dakota, based in St. Paul, Minnesota. At that point, 25 new recruits, fresh from civilian life, joined us, increasing our troops' numbers. Our next orders took us to Fort Abraham Lincoln in Dakota, where the Yellowstone expedition was being assembled with great urgency. This major expedition included the 7th United States Cavalry, under the command of the tireless General George Armstrong Custer, comprising 28 officers and 700 men. Also present were 2 companies of the 17th United States Infantry and 1 company of the 6th United States Infantry, totaling 8 officers and 135 men. A platoon of Gatling guns, with 2 officers and 32 men, attached to the 20th United States Infantry, and 40 Reen Indian scouts skilled in wilderness survival, completed the force. Brigadier General Alfred H. Terry, who commanded the department, led the expedition, arriving several days before our departure, underscoring the mission's importance. On May 17th at 4 a.m. the general signal was sounded. A call to action. Tents were struck. Camp was swiftly broken and wagons packed and sent to the quartermaster. By 6 a.m. the wagon train was on its way, escorted by the infantry marching with precision. At 7 a.m., the 7th Cavalry formed columns of platoons on Fort Lincoln's parade ground, a sight to behold at the front. The band played Garryo, the 7th's battle tune, first used during the charge at Awakita, its stirring melody recalling past victories. The column halted and dismounted just beyond the garrison, where officers and married men bid farewell to their families, a poignant moment. General Terry, aware of the ladies' concerns, allowed this brief interlude to reassure them of our capability to face any foe. Few spectators were present, but tear-filled eyes watched from latticed windows, revealing the anxiety of those left behind. During this pause, the wagon train formed up on the plateau west of the post, ready to march. As the train began to move, the assembly signal was sounded, and absentees hurried to join their commands. With the signals "mount" and "forward," the regiment marched away with determination, the band playing "The Girl I Left Behind Me," a tune that touched the hearts of all who heard it. The 7th Cavalry split into 2 columns, right and left wings, led by Major Marcus Reno and Captain Frederick Bentini, respectively. Each wing was divided into 2 battalions of 3 troops each, allowing for effective mission execution. After the first day, this marching order became routine. 1 battalion acted as the advance guard, another as the rear guard, and 1 marched on each flank of the train, ensuring safety. General Custer, with 1 troop of the advance guard, rode ahead to select the best route and designate campsites for each day's end. The other 2 troops of the advance guard reported to headquarters for pioneer duties such as building bridges and crossings. The rear guard followed, assisting any stalled wagons. The flanking battalions kept within 500 yards of the trail, cautious not to advance too far or fall behind. Our march proceeded with military precision. Each troop marched until about half a mile ahead of the train, then dismounted to let the horses graze until the train passed. The process was repeated by the other 2 troops, ensuring continuous protection of the train. If the terrain was difficult, additional flankers were dispatched to guard against surprise, maintaining pace with their respective troops. Pack animals and the beef herd were driven alongside the train by the packers and herders, who ensured their safety. Each troop had a designated wagon, carrying 5 days' rations and forage, along with mess kits, tents, and officers' supplies. The men carried carbines and revolvers, but no sabers, not even the officer of the day. Each troop horse bore an 80 to 90-pound load, including equipment, and 100 rounds of ammunition, 50 in the belt and 50 in saddlebags. The wagon train, a formidable procession of 150 vehicles, carried 30 days' supplies excluding beef, and 200 rounds of ammunition per man. 2 horse wagons contracted for the mission bore loads of 15 to 2,000 pounds, a testament to their sturdiness. 6 mule government wagons transported 3,000 to 5,000 pounds, depending on the mule's condition. The Gatling guns, cutting-edge weapons, were hauled by for cavalry horses unfit for riding, leading the train. 2 light wagons loaded with tools like axes, shovels, and pickaxes, as well as pine boards for bridge building, accompanied the pioneer troops. These crossings were often tedious, delaying the train's progress. During these intervals, cavalry horses grazed, while men napped or gathered to share stories and tobacco. Officers gathered near the crossings, observing the train's progress and engaging in conversation and humor. Around noon, the strikers carrying the haversacks were summoned, and the various messes had lunch, sometimes separately, sometimes together. As the haversacks were opened, the horses would stop grazing and approach their riders, noses extended, in a polite request for a share of the hardtack. If ignored, they would paw the ground or even nudge their riders. Seasoned soldiers, well acquainted with their horses, often shared their rations. The length of our daily march, ranging from 10 to 40 miles, depended on the obstacles we encountered and the availability of wood, water, and grass if around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. A smoke column was seen ahead. It indicated a campsite had been chosen. The cavalry, except for the rear guard, would break from the train and head directly to camp. The rear guard sent out details to gather fuel and unpack the wagons. The adjutant directed wing commanders to their camping spots, and they in turn guided battalion or troop commanders to their designated areas. Usually one flank of each line was close to the creek. The camp took the shape of a parallelogram, with wings camping on the longer sides, facing each other, and headquarters and the guard at one end. Near the creek, the wagon train secured the opposite end, overseen by the infantry battalion. Upon arrival, the troops formed lines, dismounted and unsaddled if the weather was hot. The men would rub down the horses' backs until they were dry. The horses were then led to water and put out to graze, secured by side lines and lariats under the stable guard's supervision. The men gathered fuel, sometimes wood, a mile or more from camp, or buffalo chips if necessary. The main guard or camp guard, typically 4 or 5 non-commissioned officers, and 12 or 15 privates, reported to headquarters, assuming posts on prominent points overlooking the camp. They remained vigilant against surprise, with 1 non-commissioned officer and 3 privates at each post. The officer of the day was responsible for camp security and the cavalry herds. Sometimes this duty was assigned to a specific officer, known as the officer of the herd, to preserve grazing near the camp. For the evening, all horses stayed outside camp limits until retreat. When the train arrived, headquarters and troop wagons went to their respective camping places. The officers' belongings and tents were swiftly unloaded, and the wagons were then stationed near the troop kitchen, typically positioned on the side farthest from the headquarters. The mule drivers unhitched their animals and allowed them to graze freely. A seasoned stable guard reported to the troop commander for extra duty, tasked with setting up the officers' tents and gathering fuel for their cooking. The officers' tents were generally pitched about 25 yards behind the line of the men's tents, facing them with the cooking tent situated another 10 or 15 yards further back. The striker ranged the beds and set up the furniture, which usually included a camp stool, tin wash basins, and a small mirror. After tending to their horses, the men quickly set up their tents, aligning the fronts along a line established by stretching a picket rope. The first sergeant's tent was placed on the end of the line, closest to the headquarters. Horse gear was arranged 3 yards in front of the tents, and men were not forbidden from using their saddles as pillows. A trench was dug for the mess fire, and the surrounding grass was burned To prevent the risk of prairie fires, the cooks then busied themselves preparing supper. Once the wagon train arrived, beef was distributed and enough cattle were butchered for the next day's rations. This was loaded into the wagons. Stable call sounded about an hour before sunset. Each troop assembled on the parade ground and marched to the horse herds under the first sergeant's supervision. Each man approached his horse, removed the side lines, and fastened them around the horse's neck. He then pulled the picket pin, coiled the lariat, fastened the noosed end to the horse's muzzle, mounted up and assembled in line, where the first sergeant directed. The troop was then marched to the watering place, carefully chosen to avoid the treacherous banks and muddy beds of prairie streams. After watering, the horses were tied outside the camp's immediate area. The ground behind the troop was considered their domain and fiercely protected from intrusion by others. After securing their horses, the men retrieved their curry combs, brushes and nose bags and headed to the troop wagon, where the quartermaster, sergeant, and farrier measured out forage, carefully ensuring fairness. The men then fed and groomed their horses. The officer responsible for stable duty and the first sergeant closely supervised the grooming, inspecting each horse's back and feet to ensure their health if a horse's back was injured. Due to a rider's carelessness, the rider was often required to lead the horse until it healed after stables. The cooks called the men who, with haversack and tin cup in hand, gathered at the mess fire for their hardtack, meat and coffee if game had been caught. The men would do a bit of extra cooking themselves. The officers' mess kits included a sheet iron stove, various cooking pans, a small Dutch oven, a camp kettle, a chest with tableware for 4, and a small folding table. In good weather, the table was set outside, making for a pleasant dining experience. The early part of the meal was all business, but once the main course was done, the men would relax and enjoy the delicacy.